That's pointed all the way up there. I guess that's okay. Good evening. Let's see. A little shiny up there. Turned off the side one. There you go. Don't mind me just hitting buttons right and left. I know how to use a light. Yeah, playing around with something here. Let's see, a little more. There we go. A little more light. Yeah, I haven't really done comics really much, and so wanted to try my hand at it a bit, and got this great drafting table that I found last, I guess, spring sometime, I think it was. And then most recently, I got busy with my little project, so I haven't gotten back to this just yet. So I started this actually a while ago. I did the roughs for it. But basically, I'm taking this is the script from Blade Runner, the original Blade Runner, and the opening scene. And so I did roughs. So you can see this page right there. Is that right there? Let's see. Okay. Oh, there's the first page. So just took the script there and then used the original script. It's a little bit different than what came out in the movie, obviously, but there he is, talking about the turtle. You find a turtle on its back, and so blew it up in Blue Line. And I started this actually a long time ago, so I got busy with my little camper truck conversion project, and then about a week ago I took off on a week-long trip, and where I was at there was no internet connection at all. I was offline for basically a week. I did make one trip into town to get some groceries and just see if the world had exploded yet because of all the craziness that's been going on in U.S. news. Do I read chat, Alex? So it's the truck is officially done. There are like little things I want to change and update going forward, like small add-ons. But I finished adding the last appliance a couple weeks ago, so I want to take off on a trip and did that. But I didn't end up actually using the appliance I installed because it's a hot water heater for taking hot showers, or at least not as cold ones. I'm using a little bit of water. And but yeah, where I was at, there was actually streams kind of running down this really narrow cliff valley area, and just like walking down away from my campsite, there was pools of water. So I opted for that as my cleanup location. But was just out there painting and drawing. In fact, I'll go grab right over here. I think they're dry now, but there was, one of them I did out there. haven't done oil that type in a while. And then here's another one. It's at the campsite. And let's see, there's a few more, obviously, but and then there's that one. And then I did a few in gouache. So this is a gouache. And then also another gouache. And another one. Finished off this book. Hello, Virginia. And then a couple more little gouaches. I finished that book, and so I have a little pad of watercolor paper that I kept on hand. I forgot to bring. I was meant to bring another book with me so I could just do these, these Moleskine type books. Yeah, when I walked into the area where I was at, it was just like it was, some kind of Ghibli forest. Like, this is from earlier in the summer. I did a little trip. This is it's called the George Washington National Forest. So, a little log. So, so I was out. This one's not, the design here is kind of a mess. I picked something that was a little too complicated, but that one was not quite finished. So not everything in here is done. Like, these are the nicer ones. Like this one, the lighting's a little too not quite there. This one's really stiff. This one, it was so much sand, I just gave up. But yeah, I like this one. It's from last fall. And then let's see, this one's pretty. I like that one. Kind of nice doing like more flat light ones with a little bit of light in it. This is how they kind of start. So they're pretty rough when they start. Up in the Rockies. So this one was fun, which I'm sure Halloween remembers, because this was I got COVID during spring break a year and a half ago. This was the one I did just the same day I got sick, out there alone in the forest, 10 hours away from home, having to drive back with brain fog all the way back from Florida, all the way back from Georgia to Florida. One of the few times I missed class, and then I think one of the Juans took over one of the classes, and I don't remember who took over the other one. Maybe Fiona or something. Yeah, I mean, I just, it sucked for the week, it's pretty typical, and then I was kind of worn out, but I was mostly fine by the end of spring break, but I was still testing positive for the antigens, and so Ed told me he didn't want me back on campus. So that's what I was doing that for a whole week. So as soon as I finished up that truck project, I think a day or two later, I took off and spent the week out there painting and sketching in the forest, which was nice. That's what it was for. Well, that you know of, right? So you can get COVID, like you can get infected by it and never even know it. So you can catch a cold, be infected by a cold virus and still not get sick. It's like, I'm pretty sure I had COVID the first summer. I didn't have any of the exotic symptoms, but I was sick. Yeah, so that's what I was doing. And then I finished off my desk project, and I've got some fun little tools I've made, because it's a giant table and I put a big piece of steel on it. So if I pull this back, you can see the metal over here. I had a smaller piece, and then the process of finishing off my truck project, I went to this metal store, which was pretty metal, I guess, to get some aluminum tubing for a support piece for my water heater to put under the truck. And I was like, oh, by the way, do you happen to have steel, 22 gauge steel at this size? And they said, yeah. So I built a bunch of things. Like, this is a really long bridge, so I can put this on top of my drawing and not have my hand on my actual drawing. So I put that down, and it's got enough of a gap under it, so I can just set this down, and I can rest my hand up here and draw while it's at an angle. And this one's this one's high enough so I can, you come to the edge of a sketchbook over here and your hand kind of falls off the edge of the sketchbook. It's really awkward, but this is to sit along the edge of a thicker sketchbook so I can rest it there and draw. These all have magnets attached to them, and then I've just made a bunch of similar ones. These are leftover pieces from my truck project. So this is walnut and maple and Brazilian cherry. If I tried to whack it really hard, it would fall apart. But these are more for like support, so I can put this down at the bottom, and I can put a sketchbook on top of here and let it sit at an angle. So I made a number of those. I've got a few of these in different sizes that are made out of Baltic birch plywood. But yeah, I set this up, and then I realized when I bought the this cutting board right here, it's got these angles on it already marked off that are perfect for doing perspective drawing with. And so I also got some markers, dry erase markers I can use on the metal, so I can put a horizon line across it and use it for marking vanishing points and all that, which would be really great. Can't go out into my porn right now, huh? But so this is high enough to cover up some other stuff too. But yeah, it's nice to get all these magnets on here. So like I've got my pencils writing tools all supported by magnets over there. So I've been itching to use this thing too, because I did all this stuff as I was kind of doing my truck stuff, because I had the saw out to cut all these things up. So I've been itching to get back to this, but I spent the entire day today working on my course materials for the fall. Let's see, it's getting a little too much glare at the high point up there. Too much glare. That's what it's bumping into up there, I see. I am usually draw kind of more down here, so maybe I just need to move my overhead camera down. Now you're getting the glare. And wasps are just doing their thing. Ugh. Oh, there we go. And then we'll pull you down just a little bit. Still kind of optimizing my setup here. There we go. Alright. Anyway, so I want to come back and kind of update some of this drawing just because I haven't looked at it in a while. My dog Bosch, he oh, if you pop over on the YouTube or Twitch side of things, there's a Bosch cam up where he's taking a nap. But and Hallowed Meat there has met Bosch, so. But he, some wasps got into his food bowl, and I didn't notice it right away, and he bit them, which wasps don't like being in the mouth, and so he got real sad for a bit. So, you know, there's always that problem, you know, the wasps in your food. That's weird. Slowing down over there. Just you, though, not everybody else. It's getting hot. Should be okay. How wasps look. See, all the other cameras are working fine. We'll see how it goes. Maybe it'll be fine in a bit. Yeah, they look pretty techy, right? Wasps, pretty intense looking little critters. They're definitely a evidence of function combined with form in wasps. But, you know, a lot of our robotics are based off of insects, right? Because they have the exoskeleton. Which is, you know, kind of how they work. They're also good team players, right? They build cool nests. Their favorite number is 8. Or are their things hexagonal? I think they're octagonal, right? I forget. They get the find paper wasps nests out here in the wild. These big giant super lightweight wasp nests. Sounds like putting a magnet down and then kind of rotate the drawing up here real easy. Yeah, paper wasps. They build these big, crazy looking nests. I'd like to find, we can buy them on eBay, at least in the United States. They're not, rare or anything, just people sometimes find them in the forest or along a road or something, falling out of a tree, depending on the time of year. Huh. Yeah, they probably live in lots of places. I just know they're here. Yeah, if you go on eBay, you can find people that are selling their nests sometimes. I think usually around like $60, $70. Not that expensive. Especially considering the work they put into them. And like those are I see those too. Like they make these clay tubes all hooked up together. I found a nest of those in my. There's a storage area on top of my truck that comes with the Xterra SUV, and I found some working on a nest in there once. Which is not where I want them to be. So, they're bugs, they do their thing wherever they're at, I suppose. I was watching little tiny crayfish, or kind of freshwater lobster type crustaceans that are in the freshwater streams. I was out painting, and there was a couple there that were working on building little tunnels and nests in the water right in front of me. I think I spotted a shrew running around on the ground near me. And I learned why mushrooms will sometimes grow in a circle, called a fairy circle. But apparently it's when there's a tree that's buried underground, like a tree stump. And so it'll grow around the edges of that tree and come out of the ground above it, even if it's not visible on the surface anymore. So I've seen a couple of those. One was in a farm field in Pennsylvania. And then I saw one in a park here in the city recently. It's very strange because it's like this perfect little, looks like almost like a perfect circle. Not quite perfect, but pretty close. Of mushrooms. So, new thing learned. Yeah, I didn't know either till recently. I've seen them before. I didn't know what the reason for them was, though. I have this book called it's American Forest. I forget the name of the author. It was written back in the 60s, 1965. It's referenced in another book by an author I like called Annie Dillard, and she talks about some of the reading, referencing that book in some of her books about kind of observations in nature. And so I picked up a copy and just stuck it in my little camper project. It just sits out there. I read it when I'm out in the forest. But it's just kind of a book about how forests work and the trees and all their kind of interactions. And I mentioned that because it's talking about the fungus in the forest and kind of how it converts everything into food for the trees and back and forth. And I mentioned it in there. So I was like, oh, now I know. just took off. Hey, wait a second. There's the back of his chair, right? Bring it a little bit closer. Where'd the dog go? Poor connection. Good evening, everybody. Popping in and out. So I should point that at me. Good evening, everybody popping in. Usually I'm here, I don't mind chatting, it's just there isn't like we kind of come and go, so it makes it a little difficult to go on about a subject. Anybody working on any fun projects? I personally spent most of the day organizing my course layout for the semester that starts next week. I guess I have a meeting on Friday I have to go to, but so I was going to think of a good update that I made to it that I think will be very good for the students. Actually, a few updates. Simplification and a new complication, if you will. So that's what I've been working on. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Voight Kampf. Hello. Hola, Mexico. about. Hey, buddy. Dog just came over, crawl under my feet. Lay down. Sometimes he gets indecisive, and he does that. He's complex the spot thing. Well, you know, could be a little bit better. Let's see, where were we? Drawing lines. Sorry, I need to make sure there is room for the dialogue on here before I start drawing too much further into it. So let's see, where are we? So this is before. This page here is before the last one. Kind of get nervous when I take tests. There we go. It says it here. Okay if I talk. That'll go there. Easy enough. Yeah, it's hard to get comfy, right? When you're dealing with a clumsy giant above you in the air. So I can put that a little bit closer and reference this. Alright. I appreciate that. I think I'm going to try and focus this week on finishing up these pencils and maybe getting into the inking. Been debating whether or not to found a relatively inexpensive scanner that would scan these large pages. Supposedly works pretty well. It's recommended by some comic book people. $350 though. Or I could go to work a few blocks away from here to scan it in for free. You know. So. So we'll see. Maybe if once I do a number of these, because I just want to make sure it's worth the expense. If I'm going to do a bunch of this stuff, then Mehoma. Good evening. popping in. Hey, good evening. Legoland. save perspective stuff for another time. That way I can move stuff around and get the vanishing point set up here for me. Whoa, whoa. Fell down. Ugh. Where are you going? Stay up there. What's going on here? Huh. Fix that another time, I guess. Good evening, everybody. I'm doing pretty good. There's plenty of other people getting ready for the new semester to start on, for me on Tuesday. Starts next week at the university I teach at, so spent most of the day kind of revising the course I teach at the moment. So it's mostly the same. I decided it's kind of it's concept design drawing class, so it's kind of a mix of topics related to kind of learning to draw out of from your imagination more. So it's like perspective and composition and drawing with camera lenses and shape design, a whole bunch of things, but updated portion of the course. Hello over there on Twitch. Void Force. My camera flipped around weird, so hopefully it's not too strange looking. It's kind of across the room from me, but yeah, as part of the course, at least the previous editions of the course, last year's version, they designed kind of a base using isometric perspective and then drew views of it from the inside using 1, 2, and 3 point perspective. And then thinking about it, and I think it'd be better because I think kind of adds extra to what they're doing if they designed a kind of a vehicle for the project instead of kind of an interior base. So the way that we're doing a cutaway design. So design the exterior of the vehicle along with the interior, and along with the surrounding areas, and that way they and get kind of this different type of illustration, the cutaway illustration especially, which will be, I think, work really well for their portfolio development. So I was updating the course to do that, and I'll do demos and things during the semester to show how all that works. But I was putting in a bunch of information to fix that, and then there's some other parts that I thought after doing it for a year I realized I could use some simplification. Like one of their projects had just too many things to do, and they were doing it, but I think it was just too much. In retrospect. Sort of. Yeah, it's more concept art. It's called Concept Design or Concept Drawing 1, and so it's they design as part of it like a biome, so plants and animals and an environment. I have them do it kind of more sci-fi based, so they're on a foreign planet, and so we design like a continent or an island on that planet together, and then they each kind of take it in their own direction, where they're designing plants that are beneficial or harmful, and then predator and prey, local animals, and then their own kind of character that's a human based off themselves. So they have a corporation that's kind of built around survival or manipulation of the planet or whatever, and maybe they develop a product that people go on exploratory trips or something like that, and supposed to show off on this planet how well they do that. And so originally they had a base, and then we'd kind of show them warping. That'd be their starting location. They would kind of warp to that base. Circles. Let's see. Should have put those in first, I guess. So, and that's all good. But I think we're going to switch this vehicle, which I think will be better for their development. And that way we can do the cutaway thing too, because it just be simpler, smaller scale, but still, effective. And then, so that was the biggest change, and then there was some simplification of stuff that I had them do before. I kind of combined some things together and all that. Make it just a little bit less stressful. Those actually should be much further apart. But the idea is kind of help, the main purpose is kind of help them start to be able to use their actual imagination to visualize things and then draw them confidently. And that's kind of my intent with the whole course there, is to help them out with that. And it's kind of, I have a way of kind of showing them how to position themselves inside the spaces or around the spaces, and kind of imagine the camera going through the whole thing, so they can actually do a reasonable representation, even if we're not doing like the intensive perspective stuff that I used to do on here, which I should do more of, since that's all my courses are based off of. But yeah, so I just I'm taking a little bit of a break. I just finished my little Xterra camper project, and then went out for a little trip with it. Got back the beginning of this week. Or no, I guess sometime recently. Yeah, there's kind of the ideas you have in your head, right? And then like there's a lot of things I kind of see in my head, but until I'm actually uh, until I actually put it to paper and commit it to a surface, it's kind of this vague notion. But as soon as you do that, you start to realize that there's problems with what it is when you before once you put it on paper, that didn't exist until that moment as an issue. And so that's one of the reasons why we have this course, is to kind of help them be able to do that more quickly. So I think the intent with the program we have right now is to kind of really convert it more into an entertainment design program where they're doing concept art and visual development, and some people are leaning more into visual effects or the filmmaking side of things. Or my side, which is more the illustration side or game art, 3D production. And so this kind of process is really vital for that. So we start off with what's called isometric perspective, which is there's video games that use that type of perspective, like the old SimCity games use those, or a lot of the kind of those top-down style games. Diablo is more of like a 3-point perspective thing, but it's pretty close to isometric. So you set up an isometric space, and then we kind of be able to set up a camera view within that to draw from different angles and that. So there's a whole little process for it. It's a bit of a challenge, and but it kind of helps them see that they can actually use their imagination to make those things in their head real. So yeah, that's what I'm kind of doing since I started at this university. So using things from the last school I was at, so we did do kind of the more intensive perspective stuff. I'm just not doing that here yet. I'd like to do that here to a certain degree, but the timing isn't quite right for that just yet. We're working on changing some of the program stuff here to be a lot more focused. That's kind of where the program here struggles. It's just not that focused. I think it could be a lot more. So he's got a new department head who kind of sees eye to eye with everything, but with a lot of what I've been recommending. Since coming here. We both have a background teaching at the last school I was at, and he was there as a student. And so it kind of makes some of that communication a little bit easier because we have a better or more common frame of reference for that way that experience works. But in finishing my little Xterra camper project, I made these little tools like this. I have this bridge that I made. It's quite long actually, but put magnets on it. I've updated my little table here, so it's got giant piece of steel on it. So everything's magnetic, so I can draw at an angle, and I can hold everything down with magnets. And I've got all these little things that are kind of leftover bits from my camper build. So I've got these pieces of wood that I can brace sketchbooks on, and they've all got magnets on them. But yeah, that's the real trick, because we get these ideas in our head, and until we can start, visualizing it properly, that is, putting it, pencil to paper and being able to kind of see it there, or in 3D, or some kind of actual format where we can reference it and actually put it in front of our own eyes. It's kind of this vague notion, but as soon as you start to make it more concrete, more objective, then you can actually start making better decisions about what it's actually going to be like, what's actually possible. And that's why drawing is so important. It's a big, one of the big problems with AI. 3D World 6 points explanation. The big problem with AI is that you're because you're not actually designing anything with it. You're just making an image. It kind of actually disrupts your imagination and forces you to rely on some kind of algorithmic process, and keeps you from actually exploring the possibility yourself, because you just kind of accept its outputs. But the 6 points explanation, I've not heard of that one. I mean, there's different kinds of perspective, like 5-point perspective, which is the fisheye type, which is more how you actually see. So, yeah, it was. I think drawing is just really important in general. Like, it doesn't matter what your profession is, whether it's in the arts or not. I think drawing is really great because it's that ability to visually explain what you want. And so, whether you're a marketer or a business person or a hairdresser or a construction worker or whatever, being able to kind of sit down and sketch out your intents, make a big deal. Oh, okay. I might have a delay on mine too. I've been cleaning up my computer stuff because I have this. When I was doing all of my originally when I was doing all of my courses on my teaching site, I was using this MacBook that I had bought after leaving one university, and that's now it's a long time ago. That was 2016, turning into 8 years ago. And I've done all these hard drives with all the data on them in Mac format, but I switched back to a PC a couple of years ago, but hadn't moved files around and changed the hard drives to a PC readable format. And so it took this week after getting back from my little trip. In case people wonder, I'm talking to somebody over on Twitch, but but it kind of made it difficult to me to kind of go back and forth with those files and update things or use them or update course material info on the site. And so decided today, well, not today, but a couple days ago, to start transferring files over. So I suspect that, because it's going over the Wi-Fi from my Mac to my PC, that it might be eating into my broadcasting fidelity a little bit. I'm not sure, but I think so. I mean, they're right next to each other, but who knows what the effect on that would be. So, could be my fault, not necessarily your fault. But, the biggest one should be mostly done tonight. I can wipe that drive, convert it to a PC format, plug it into the PC, and transfer the files back onto it. And the goal this week is to finish the pencils on this, if not the inks, or get the ink started. I've been sitting on this little project for a while, got delayed, and I decided to focus on finishing my little SUV camper. And school's starting next week, and I'd like to kind of have this well underway, so I have that as a focusing point. Among other things that I'm working on too, like my little portfolio project. But I wanted to kind of study some of this comic stuff so I can maybe do my own stories someday. This is from the Blade Runner script. So I'm kind of using that as a little test template. While I'm working on the other thing too. So that's what's going on over here. Yeah, that's the place to ink it next. So, looking at getting a larger format scanner because this is 11 by 17 paper, or A3-ish in size. So it's pretty sizable. I did find a relatively expensive one, but I have access to scanners in the Office University that's large enough for this. So should probably be a good boy and not spend the money if I don't need to. At the moment, anyway. Especially considering how much I've spent on my little camper project, and then my dog hurting himself a few weeks ago. because part of what led me to focus on finishing that project was his little injury. He's fine now, but cracked a toenail up into the quick. I'm not exactly sure how that happened, but it was really, it was bleeding. It was really, it hurt. You don't want our little friends to be in pain. And so I went to the vet, emergency vet, because it was in the evening when when I finally realized what the injury was. He'd been favoring his foot for a couple days, but I didn't see anything down there, so I figured maybe just got like a little scratch or something, and then went out for a little bit of a walk, and he didn't want to go very far. I think it was that moment it had just cracked just to the right amount, and took a look and spotted it, and found a vet, a kind of nighttime vet that we could take him to, and had to put him under and remove a lot of his toenail, and it was a lot of pain for him for a few days while it started to heal. I couldn't take him anywhere like that. They wanted me to keep him in really low activity for a couple of weeks. And so, as we were stuck at home, decided to go ahead and finish off that little camper project. Yeah, he's perfectly fine now. He's just, all normal and everything. But it was definitely, 3 or 4 days where it was definitely was hurting. They had to keep the bandage on for 2 days. They wanted me to put a cone on him, which I'm surprised they didn't do that while he was asleep. Like, they just tried to put his cone on until he was coming out of anesthesia, which I thought was a little bit weird, but maybe there's a good reason for that. I don't know. I doubt it, but I think it'd just be a lot easier to do while he's asleep. He was definitely kind of in a panic when he came out of his anesthesia. They said he was probably hallucinating a little bit. Never put it on. He was, he left his foot, he left the bandage alone, and he wasn't licking the wound at all. He was just leaving it alone. So, got an expensive cone unused sitting in the other room if anybody wants it. Cone of shame. But because I had to keep him on a short leash and couldn't go on very long walks and all that, so I had to sit down and finish that camper project. And so now it's done, and then we went camping and painting for a week out in the forest with no connection where I was at, which was nice. Especially considering all the drama in the United States at the moment with all the attempted assassination and the political maneuverings going on all over the news. I was half worried I'd come out of there and find, everything in a smoking ruin. I'd say, I'll just go back in and paint until the end. Yeah, and his medical report, their examination, when I was looking at it, because they sent it to me when they were done, they also said he was fat. I was like, oh. So I've cut his treats back by half, and his food back by a third, and he's looking better. My sister was like, "Oh, he's gotten so thin. Look, he had a lot of buildup around his neck, which is one of the ways it shows up on a dog." And so it's like, yeah, I guess I better do that. For myself too. here? Plan here is to hand letter this too, so there's my little Ames lettering guide. Got that somewhere in here. There it is. Okay, I'm using this project case basically as like a training. I want to do a few of these to kind of help me learn this stuff. Let's see, this goes this way, and then we need top line here. Let's get this lined up there. Space. I always feel like that's really small, but apparently that's the right size. Like if you're doing a standard comic book font size, apparently that's the right size. Yeah, the thing is, like, a lot of the problems we often are trying to solve right now have been solved for a very long time. Like, things are really, really well understood. Like, they've been well understood for a long, long time. It's like when people wondered how the Greeks, got the nice curves on their pillars, and it turned out they kind of made a short version where basically they had like a straight edge like this, and they would just do a curve like this, and then they divide that into 4, and that would tell them on a small version, how far away it had to be on each section to get that nice even curve. And they found kind of indications of that on some of the buildings. I want to grab this one. Or the narrower one, look. So that's always been kind of interesting to me that, there's a lot of times like we're thinking we're like uncovering some secret. And really there's not really that many secrets. It's just, generation to generation we sometimes just forget. Or, we value one thing a little bit more than we did at a different time. Here's the smaller one. You are hiding. That should be okay. Or it's just something we've never thought about, and so it doesn't factor into our thoughts. Just our own ignorance of what's been, or what's been thought about or has been devalued for some reason. And that's kind of one of the magical things about the time we live in, is that a lot of that information is a lot more accessible now, even if it's kind of distributed in a confusing way. A lot of times it's just learning to ask the right question on the internet to find it. Whereas before you just had to be lucky if your library happened to carry the book that had that information. So now we have access to so much. And even with books, like I've been doing a big kind of personal study program where I've been looking at things that I felt like I could be better at, whether it's this visual storytelling or character expressions and things like that, more some of the more imaginative things that I've wanted to improve. And there's just so much out there; it's hard to know what to look at sometimes. But kind of go from one thing to another and see what comes out of that. So I've been gradually going through a lot of the kind of art instruction books that I've picked up over the years, and reading them and then sketching the images in them as a study method, and then looking for opportunities to kind of use what's in them for my own in my own projects. So animal drawing books and yeah. Well, it's like the tool thing. What I like to say is, when I talk to my students, I always tell them there are no rules, there are only tools. And if you understand that, and you understand what the tools are and what they're typically used for, you can use a hammer to put a nail in, right? But you can also use it to break apart things or bash a head in if necessary, I guess, self-defense or whatever. You can use it metaphorically. There's all the different ways that a tool can be applied. But kind of having an initial understanding of that tool, what it's generally been used for successfully in the past, will kind of help you move forward with it. And so that's definitely the attitude that I try to encourage. I do teach my students very specific processes, step by step. How do you think through these problems in the more common or easily applicable ways, which I think is more beneficial in the long term. But I always try to emphasize that there's lots of ways of doing things, and what we do here should only be considered kind of the beginning phase of that. thing I try to do too is teach things in a applicable way. So just like I try to study in applicable ways for myself when I'm teaching in the classroom. I'm always trying to say, we don't just learn perspective to learn perspective. We learn it because it's a tool for communication, and it helps you draw more believable, convincing spaces that will be better in the long term for your own ability to express your ideas. And so that's like the concept design class. It's one of its big purposes to teach the technical skills, but it's but really those technical skills only matter if you have something to apply it to. And so I always try to make sure that whatever project we're working on, it feels like it's something that could go into their portfolio, or something that's important, could be important to other projects they're working on at the same time. It's kind of one of the things we're trying to change in the department I'm in, is to make the same sections of a course taught the same no matter who the instructor is. At least in the first, the sophomore year, maybe a little bit into the junior year. I do it in the freshman year too, but we don't have control over that yet. But or much say in it yet anyway. But if we can do that to a great degree, then it allows kind of concurrent teachers to take advantage of what's being taught in other classes in their classes, especially if we get students on a proper linear schedule. And then but it also allows future teachers to understand that what their students know, so they can actually not have to feel like they're reteaching them things, or that they're aware of what the students' capabilities and experiences have been, rather than just being a random assortment of potential skills that randomly show up in their classroom. Which is typically how most university education goes, is that random quality, which I think is a big problem. And I think more modern students, I think they're more demanding of that kind of integration, because they're more aware of how much information's out there, what's possible for people, and I think they want more. It's like a lot of educators I talk to, they'll complain about students' lack of interest in a class or a subject matter or a historical artist. And I think there's a problem with that to a certain degree, but I think they forget that students today, especially, far more than when I was a student, they're just inundated with so much information, visual and otherwise, and it's hard to kind of parse what's important. And so if you can find ways of making what you're teaching really, really relevant to the problems the students are trying to solve, the more likely they are to learn about the things you feel like are important, because it'll be important to them. So I'm going to save the perspective here for another time when I can open up the desk a little bit here, set up some vanishing points. What time is it anyway? Oh, 10 o'clock. So I think it's a good spot to stop. But that's kind of the way, some of the ways I've kind of changed my own approach to teaching over the last few years, is to kind of really put that in the forefront of my layout. Yeah. I think that academic basis, the skill set. And I'm not talking about like the French Academy necessarily, but it's kind of an actual approach to something that's confidently developed that has broad actual application. It's going to make a big difference to the student and their confidence and their abilities to succeed. Because I know, like, I look back on my own education, a lot of things I wasn't taught, like a lot of the perspective stuff that I teach now wasn't part of education at all. It could have been my grad school, it wasn't certainly in my undergrad. The perspective in school, it was just sit in the hallway and have everything go to the vanishing point in the hallway. You see that a lot of places where students are all sitting out in the hall with their drawing boards, drawing the hallway. I think maybe the least useful perspective exercise. But I did those, as a student. But it doesn't really teach you how it works or why and all of that, and it doesn't develop that imagination. It's good to draw things, but I think you can do things with greater purpose than that. But I think I'm gonna call it there for tonight. Hopefully be back tomorrow. And thanks everybody that came in.